The cafe clock struck 1:30, and still no one sat across from her. The chair opposite lay empty, the soft hum of lunchtime chatter a cruel reminder that she was alone again. Isabelle traced her finger along the rim of her coffee cup, watching the steam swirl and fade, just like the hope she'd built up for this blind date. She'd told herself it was silly to expect anything. After all, the last 3 dates had ended in awkward silences and polite excuses. But something about this one had felt different. His messages had been warm, honest, filled with a quiet humor that made her smile before bed. She had even worn her favorite lavender dress, the one that always made her feel like maybe, just maybe, good things could still happen. But now 40 minutes had passed, and he hadn't come. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, love, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us spread more heartwarming stories like this one. Just as Isabelle sighed and reached for her purse to leave, the soft jingle of the cafe door caught her attention. 2 little girls, no older than 6, walked in hand in hand. They were identical twins, both with chestnut curls tied in uneven pigtails and wide, curious eyes that searched the room like they were on a mission. The taller one carried a folded piece of paper. The smaller one clutched a small plush bunny missing one ear. They scanned the cafe until their eyes landed on Isabelle, and then, to her utter confusion, they marched straight toward her. "Are you Miss Isabelle?" the taller one asked, her voice small but certain. Isabelle blinked, caught off guard, and nodded hesitantly. "Yes, I am." The girl smiled in relief and handed her the paper. "My daddy's sorry he's late," she said, enunciating each word carefully, "but he said you should stay. He's coming." For a moment Isabelle just stared, unsure how to respond. "Your daddy?" she asked, her voice soft. The twins nodded enthusiastically, sliding into the empty chair across from her, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "He said we could keep you company until he comes," the smaller twin added, hugging her bunny tightly. Something inside Isabelle softened. She didn't have the heart to send them away, so she smiled and said, "Well then, I'd love the company." The twins beamed. As minutes passed, Isabelle found herself laughing more than she had in weeks. The girls, Sophie and Clara, were full of stories about their school, their cat named Mango, and how their daddy made the best pancakes, even when he burns them a little. They spoke of him with such warmth that Isabelle began to imagine the kind of man who could raise 2 little hearts that glowed with so much love. Still, a small ache tugged at her. Why would a man bring his daughters into a blind date? Why was he late at all? An hour slipped by before the cafe door opened again, and a tall man hurried in, slightly out of breath. His dark hair was tousled, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and his expression, when he spotted the twins sitting with Isabelle, shifted from worry to relief. "Sophie, Clara," he said, approaching quickly, "I told you to wait outside." The twins giggled. "We didn't want her to leave." Isabelle looked up, and for a moment words escaped her. The man was handsome, yes, but there was more. Something in the tired kindness of his eyes, in the quiet way he carried himself. He looked like someone who had weathered storms and learned to smile through the rain. "I'm so sorry," he began, his voice deep and sincere. "There was an accident on the road. Traffic was a mess, and my babysitter canceled last minute. I didn't want to cancel on you, but I couldn't leave them home alone. I told them to wait outside for a minute while I parked, but it looks like they had other plans." Isabelle's heart softened at the sight of his flustered smile. "It's all right," she said gently. "They've been wonderful company." He exhaled, visibly relieved. "I'm Mason," he said, extending a hand, "and those 2 little troublemakers are Sophie and Clara." Isabelle shook his hand, warmth spreading through her. "Nice to meet you, Mason." The rest of the afternoon unfolded like sunlight through clouds. Mason ordered coffee and a small plate of pancakes for the twins. They really talked. He told her about how his wife had passed away 3 years ago from a rare illness, leaving him to raise the girls alone. How he'd given up his engineering job for a while to be there for them, taking freelance work at home to make sure they never felt alone. Isabelle listened, her chest tightening with quiet admiration. She told him about her own journey, how she'd moved to the city after her parents' passing, how she'd spent years pouring herself into her job as a children's book illustrator, always telling herself she'd find love when life slowed down. It never really had. Until now. As they spoke, the twins dozed off, their little heads resting against each other. Mason covered them gently with his jacket, his expression tender, filled with a kind of love that words couldn't quite capture. Isabelle watched him, realizing that this was what she'd been searching for all along. Not perfection, not charm, but genuine kindness. A man who loved deeply and quietly. Outside, the afternoon sun spilled through the window, casting a warm glow over the table. It felt like time had slowed to let this moment breathe. When the girls woke up, Mason started to apologize again for the chaos of the day, but Isabelle stopped him with a soft laugh. "You don't have to," she said. "If this is what a date with you looks like, I think I'd like to try again sometime." His eyes widened slightly before a smile spread across his face. Really, really. From that day on, things began to shift for both of them. Mason and Isabelle started seeing each other more. Coffee dates that turned into picnics, picnics that turned into weekends together at the park with the twins chasing butterflies. Isabelle found herself sketching again, not just for her books, but for joy. She drew Sophie and Clara playing by the riverbank, Mason reading them bedtime stories, the small pieces of a life that felt fuller with each passing day. But life wasn't without challenges. Mason struggled with guilt, wondering if it was right to move on, if loving someone new meant he was letting go of the past. Isabelle, too, wrestled with doubt, afraid she couldn't fill the space left behind in their families' hearts. There were quiet nights when she'd sit beside him, his hands trembling slightly as he spoke about the wife he'd lost, and she'd simply listen. No judgment, no jealousy, just understanding. One day, during a Sunday park outing, Sophie ran up to Isabelle holding a wildflower crown. "You're gonna be our princess," she declared, placing it gently on Isabelle's head. Clara nodded solemnly. "No," she said, "she's our family now." Mason froze, his eyes glistening as Isabelle knelt, tears threatening to spill. "You really think so?" she whispered. The girls nodded with such certainty that it broke something open inside her. That evening, as the sun melted into gold across the skyline, Mason took Isabelle's hand. "You've changed our world," he said quietly. "You've given my girls their laughter back, and you've given me hope again." Isabelle squeezed his hand. "You didn't need me to bring that back," she said softly. "It was always there, you just needed someone to remind you." They stood there under the fading sky, the twins dancing in circles around them, their laughter like music carried by the breeze. It wasn't a fairy tale, not the kind written in books, but it was real, imperfect, and deeply, beautifully human. Weeks later, Mason surprised Isabelle at the same cafe where it all began, the same table, the same warm hum of chatter. But this time the chair across from her wasn't empty. Sophie and Clara ran in again, giggling, but this time they were carrying something small, a drawing. It showed 4 stick figures, a man, 2 little girls, and a woman holding hands beneath a bright blue sky. At the bottom, in crayon letters, it said, "Our family." Mason knelt beside them, looking up at Isabelle with a soft, trembling smile. "We thought maybe it's time for a new beginning," he said, "if you'll have us." Her vision blurred as she nodded, unable to speak. The cafe, the laughter, the scent of coffee, all of it blurred into one perfect, heart-stirring moment. Sometimes love doesn't come the way we expect it. It doesn't arrive on time or in perfect form. Sometimes it walks in holding 2 little hands and says softly, "My daddy's sorry he's late." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Let's remind the world that love, patience, and second chances can still find their way home. Special request: comment below with "if you believe every broken heart deserves a second chance."